What's up, water cooler? It's a great day for episode 4 of Water Cooler Talks on Manufacturing and Technology. I am Tristan Linville, joined by my co-host, Michael Callahan. Michael, how are you today?
Man, this never gets old. The intro just it pumps me up. It's like coffee in my veins. I feel like I'm ready to go tackle the day. So
Yeah.
Thanks. It's actually a great time because I always talk about it being sunny. It's been sunny for way too long here in Georgia. Literally, I've had to actually water my grass because it was turning yellow. And so,
I heard it rain.
my daughter, real quick, my daughter broke her arm, right? Beginning of summer, terrible. Finally got her cast off.
Okay.
What are we going to do? We're going to plan a whole day around the pool. Guess what happens? It rains.
Thunder.
But there's blessing in rain because now my grass is starting to green up.
Yeah, but your daughter's upset.
What a day. And my daughter got to swim a little bit. So, yeah.
Good to hear.
Let's go.
All right. Well, today, special day, first guest that we're going to bring on. I'm going to bring her in. How about that?
Let's do it.
All right.
Can't wait.
Everybody, Sandra Shoemaker, how are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Welcome, Sandra. You just had the grand entrance.
Oh, wow.
It was fun.
So, everybody, Sandra is a very sweet woman. However, she has worked in some very intense positions over her career. So, I wore my Lockheed Martin shirt just for her. Fun facts about Sandra. She was the first female director of engineering at Lockheed Martin Aeronautics, one of the first female vice presidents at Lockheed Martin Aeronautics, and she's my neighbor's mom.
Wow. Hold on, you forgot another first.
Go
She's
for it.
the first guest on the Water Cooler Wednesday podcast. Welcome.
Yeah,
you can add that to your resume. It's a great one.
Michael, do you want to initiate her with a joke?
I probably got a couple up my sleeve, Sandra. But, it's summer. But why should you never go to a wedding in winter?
No idea.
Because thankfully, unlike Sandra, someone always gets cold feet. So, lesson learned. Those summer weddings coming.
That one might be the worst yet.
Yeah, they probably so. Instead of dad jokes, they should probably be called bad jokes because they're very bad. That was actually also a dad joke. But let's move on.
Indeed. Well, Sandra, let's just take a moment and talk about your work experiences, life experiences. I just named a couple of your Lockheed Martin titles, but do you want to highlight your various experiences there?
Sure. I had a very winding, maybe circuitous career path, but one that was really interesting and challenging. I am one of those dinosaurs who spent the bulk of their career with one company, but I began in the engineering department of General Dynamics Fort Worth, and I moved around in several areas of engineering, ending up over engineering labs and test. From there, I moved into program management on the F-16 program. What a fun program and fun assignment that was. Eventually, I moved over the program management core function, responsible for all the people resources and processes and tools that were used across all programs in the company. I learned a lot when I was over integrated company operations, and I'll talk a little bit about that and merging some companies. And after that, I was over enterprise resource planning, which y'all are very familiar with.
Well-versed.
Well-versed. After that, I was responsible for aero services, and then I ended my career in supply chain management.
Love it.
Awesome.
I feel like we all have a little bit of relations here. So Tristan's got some engineering. So obviously you and Tristan can relate to that. And I have some supply chain fun of going through supply chain in the middle of COVID, which
Oh, wow.
don't recommend. But I'm sure you have some of that experience too.
But if anything, I think COVID highlighted the importance of supply chain to everyone.
100% agree.
Yeah.
I think we always talk about these call them black swan events and things that no one ever thinks is going to happen. And so back then, supply chain wasn't very talked about that often, right? It was just, hey, get the material in. But now with that happening, there's all this focus on supply chain planning and making sure that we're looking out forward and looking back into historicals and taking out, different variations so that we're more accurate. So I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. And, you just named all the experiences. And, if I would have stayed at Lockheed, I think I would have gone into program management because that just seemed like a intense but fun job. You get to kind of touch everything. So the PM stuff is fun.
There's probably a lot of listeners who are like, program management, what the heck is that?
Are you one of those, Michael?
I'm listening and I'm one of these. What the heck is that? So let's talk about it. What is program management?
Well, it's a series of disciplines really that are applied to the running of programs. And I'll talk about some of those because as you can see after my program management experience, I applied those disciplines in, whether it was the ERP implementation or whatever else. But, it's everything from the planning and the change control and the risk mitigation and, obviously the business side of it with the cost and schedule, test, communication, you name it, all of those disciplines.
So it's actually really interesting because, I came in from an industrial manufacturing distribution background. And so when I came in, some of my work was with A&D companies, and we often heard the term program. And I was like, program to me is like me sending my kid to, some camp over this. So what is like can y'all maybe high level help listeners understand what is a program in terms of that A&D, aerospace and defense background?
Usually a program is defined around a particular product, like the F-16 program, the F-35, the F-22, a lot of our black programs. So that's really how we package it. And within a program, there are many programs. The F-16, back at the time when I was on it, we were doing business with 26 countries. We had unique, programs, requirements, contracts with all of them. And so you would have program managers at lower levels managing those kinds of things. But basically it's a product line.
That's very helpful. Very cool.
And it is fun. I mean, right? Like Sandra mentioned, the black programs, those are your very secret sauce. You have to have a clearance to be read onto those, and those products are kind of your forward-looking future type products for national security. And so Sandra knows a lot of secrets that we don't.
There we go.
And needs to always know those secrets that we should never.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to your time there, right? The focus of this podcast is all about manufacturing and technology. But in your time there, you were faced with, I'm sure, plenty of technological challenges. I'll just open the floor and you can start with a couple or a few and we'll kind of ask from there. What did you face?
Okay. One of the decisions made by the corporation a number of years ago was to merge three of its companies into a single distinct entity called Lockheed Martin Aeronautics Company, LMARO. I was asked to lead that transition team to merge the three companies, and of course, it had to be done in a way that was going to provide efficiencies and cost savings. So you have to understand going in, these three companies came from different corporate heritages. We had the Skunk Works in Palmdale, California, that was a heritage Lockheed company. We had Lockheed Martin in Marietta, Georgia, that was Heritage Martin Marietta Company. And then we had the Lockheed Martin Fighter Enterprise in Fort Worth, which was Heritage General Dynamics. And so not only had these three companies grown up in different cultures with different ways of doing things, but they had all been competitors with each other at some point in time. So it would be fair to say that there wasn't a lot of corporate brotherly love just yet. That was going to be something that would have to grow with a unique aero culture, but that was the job. Let's merge these companies, and so one of the things that we decided to do was we had to start with the organization. Um, you obviously don't need three production departments, three HRs, three biz ops, three everythings. And so we defined a top level structure and then made the selections for the executive team. And we did it in such a way that all of the programs and sites participated because we didn't want this to come across as a Fort Worth takeover. Fort Worth
Sure.
had been designated as the headquarters, and so there was a lot of fear that that's what was going on.
Yeah.
But we did that, and once we had that executive team in place, they were then able to participate in defining the rest of their organization and select their leadership team. Only after that was done could you start working on processes and tools and things. So that's what we did. And once we started into the process and tool decisions, what you found that there were endless reasons posed by sites, by programs, that they needed to retain their unique, sometimes homegrown
Sure.
systems and processes. And but we knew that the only chance that we had to really realize cost savings was to come as close to we could as with single processes and tools.
Yeah.
Uh, this whole thing took about a year and a half. But at that time, Alamero was able to function as a fully merged entity. Now, I would be disingenuous if I were to say that the culture was able to change in a year and a half. But I will say that having those tools and processes in place and the organizational structure enabled us to start moving toward what is now the LMARO culture.
I
Yeah.
love
And that culture is good. Like I was on the missiles and fire control side of things, and every now and then we'd get somebody come over from LM Aero because I was in Grand Prairie, Texas. Um, Obviously, Aero, me and you know, is in Fort Worth area. And you get somebody over from Aero, and they're like, man, they're just super jazzed about Aero still. And so the culture is great there. And Missiles and Fire Control was great too. I felt like we were like the small family. I felt like Aero was like the cool place to be. So that
it.
you did a good job.
That's amazing, because I think what I took out of that is there's a couple of things, but first it's as things come together, right? Big companies merge. So when I was at Swagelock, we actually acquired a kind of a territory of South Carolina. The first piece is, to your point, getting the structure in place, getting the right people on the train moving forward, on the bus going in the right direction, right? And then it was, what's next? And I think this also applies, again, this is probably cheesy, but to ERP implementations, like get the right people on the bus, get the structure in place, get the system running, and then what's next? It's culture. What's next? It's making those processes as efficient as possible, and it's continuing to move up that to get where you all are today. So that's really cool.
Well, you're a great lead in to the next example I was going to give because after Alamero had been merged for a few years, we saw the value in moving toward a unique ERP system across the entire enterprise. So SAP was selected, and we pulled together a team of SAP implementation experts, consultants, and then expertise leaders from within the company in production, supply chain, global sustainment, finance, all the affected areas. And we made this dedicated team in a dedicated building to that was the focus, and that's what we worked on. And we knew that we needed to do this in the most efficient, effective way that we could. Um, you know, there are high risks in an ERP implementation, as I'm sure you guys know. One of them is cost. I mean, it is not an inexpensive venture. But over and above the cost are schedule implementation impacts to all your programs, um, process and programming expertise, or do you have the right people that you can pull on? And then just that willingness to change culture in selective areas, because you can't hang on to the way you've always done business. Um, and, that one thing that we also had to realize that the risks weren't just limited to our aero company, but some of them had corporate wide implications. Let me give you an example of that. Because of the size and portfolio of Aero, we were a huge chunk of the LM corporate pie. And so anything we did had implications at the corporate level. A lot of SAP implementations up until that point in time had some negative impacts as companies went live. One of the things, for instance, that they would have trouble with is billing. Something as simple as being able to get your accounts receivable going. And we knew that if Arrow couldn't bill for even a month or so, it would have huge impacts across the whole corporation. And we didn't want to do things like impact stock price or anything like that. So we knew that we were going to have to mitigate every single risk. So the first thing we decided to do with an old program manager here running it was run it like a program. And so we had planning, we had change control, risk management, resource management, test, communication, all of those program management disciplines we were talking about a while ago. And each of those areas, I will say, brought their own challenge. But you had asked me to pick one. So the one that I'll talk about is change management. Um, every single discipline was very adept at defining very valid reasons why they needed to have the SAP software modified to accommodate their unique way of doing things or to tie into some of their heritage systems and tools. Uh, but we knew that not only would the customization take a lot of time and money, but we knew in the future that would pose a lot of risk too, is every time SAP came up with a new version, how many of those links were going to be broken, et cetera, et cetera. So our job was let's minimize any cost customization. So we went into it saying no customization. Anything that goes beyond that is going to have to go before a change control board that we established and would have to convince that CCB that the risk that was going to take was worth it. So, it's amazing how emotional people get to their processes and tools. I mean, this is a very emotional thing. And so we had a lot of knockdown dragouts, a lot of territorial fights between the functions, between uh, the SAP folks, the Deloitte people, us. Um, but we were able to, I think, minimize any of the customization that went on. And that had a huge payoff. I mean, bottom line, we went live on schedule, which nobody thought would happen. And nothing broke. It was a huge success.
That's amazing.
Well, it's funny. The SAP Corporation came to us after we went live and said, "You guys are the largest and most complex ERP implementation we've done in the world so far, and yet you had the fewest number of hiccups of anybody." So I thought that was a huge compliment.
I
Yeah,
absolutely. That's because they had changed superstar Sandra running the show.
No, we had a fabulous team,
Yeah.
fabulous team.
yeah.
Well,
And there's a
I
go
love
ahead,
something
Michael.
you said because so you had a team, a change board where if people wanted to maybe go and do those extensions or those modifications, they came to you first. So
They had to
there's
come
kind
to
of
the
like
CCB. Yes,
I love that. That's such a cool idea.
yeah,
Yeah, and there's so much like there's I don't know, four major things that I think you said in that segment is one, value, right? You have to be able to prove out value for these kind of
right.
projects. These are not small, cheap projects. Um, Risk mitigation was another one that I was, of course, you have to think of those risks. You got to think of the risks of the business and you got to try and get ahead of that. Uh, the right team. So this one I think is interesting. Lockheed has massive amount of resources. Many of the customers that we see in the market today, maybe not those kind of resources. So I think with your business, you have to balance that. Do we have the ability to make like a little center of excellence, or do you have to kind of rely on your partner, your vendor, your system integrator to have that partnership? You're still going to have to put forward resources to help, but you just have to understand your reliance there. And then the last one was the change management and the limiting customizations, right? Where today there's a big trend of moving to the cloud, right? So that hopefully a lot of those customizations can kind of stay. Different vendors are, but the trend is still true today. You want to limit those customizations to deliver as much out of the box as possible. So it's just interesting that you hit however many years ago that you guys went live there, you hit those same topics that are still ringing true completely today.
Yeah.
Good.
And I think I think back to again time at SwageLock where everybody finds a way to work in the system that they're given, right? So when you're on a old green screen system, you find the way to work, and that's how it becomes comfortable and makes sense. And so when we go to this new system, in our minds, that's the way we do it. And I think to the change boards question that I would imagine you all are asking is why do you need? Why is my favorite question ever. I tell my kids why all the time, and they also tell me why. But it's really why do you need to keep it this way? Why are you doing it this way when this is maybe the preferred way? And if we start understanding that why, we can then understand, do we keep it, or is actually the why because that's how we've done it the whole time.
Right.
So
And that was the emotional piece that kept coming out,
yeah,
um, and and people felt like it wasn't emotion; it was valid rationale,
yeah,
but it was rationale that was laced with a lot of emotion, and it was hard to see beyond. We could do this a different way.
absolutely. Well, I have a question for you. As we see and hear a lot of different things in technology today, what are you hearing? What are you seeing from a technology industry in the manufacturing world right now? What are the trends that you're hearing, thinking about, seeing that are important to you?
Well, I would say there's some conflicting information that you get. Like, are we going to be doing more outsourcing or less?
Hmm.
Because that certainly impacts the way in which you do business. Uh, More outsourcing is always driven by the hope of cost reduction, uh, and but because of the geopolitical impacts, uh, a lot of companies are getting cold feet about doing more of that, and so they're pulling some things back in. And as they do that, it's an opportunity to update and do things a new way. But it's also a challenge too, that something that they had maybe outsourced a number of years ago, that they're having to bring back in and find that expertise and develop that COE to do that.
Yeah. Question around that, and this will be my final question, but in terms of outsourcing, insourcing, that conversation, how does technology play a role, or what would you say is really important to make sure your technology has to allow for that to be possible?
Well, I'm not sure I understand your question, but
That's great.
let me attempt
Yeah. That
to
means I asked a
answer.
terrible question.
No, 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 no. Um, R&D, technology development, is either done in house. If you're Lockheed Martin, you have a Skunk Works or a different place to really incubate those good technologies,
Mhm.
or it's something that you buy, either in the form of buying a technology or buying a small company that has developed a technology.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that I consult now, and one of my biggest customer bases is are investors that are looking at different technologies or different companies, and looking at 5 years down the road, where do you think this is going?
Mhm.
Because do we need to buy this company? Do we need to buy whatever? And so it's very interesting that that is a hot topic of conversation.
Yeah. No, I love it. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we're probably over time as usual, but this content and what you've got to share with us, Sandra, is incredible. So interesting to hear from someone who's never worked for a tech company, but obviously you're very hands-on in these kind of technology projects, and it all of it rings. It's just you're preaching to the choir here. So I think to kind of get us wrapped up, my wife, I asked her when her birthday is, and she said March 1st. So I walked around the room and then I asked again.
You're so bad. You're so
That's
bad.
very good. Uh,
But
well,
but Sandra, again, thank you so much for coming on, being our first guest. Add another first, as Michael
here we
said.
go.
I'm so excited for this episode to release.
Well, y'all were very kind to invite me. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Sandra. Enjoyed getting to learn a little bit more about your experiences, and looking forward to releasing this to the world.
All right.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
as always, sit back, sip your H2O, and hope you enjoyed the show.
Love it.
Bye, guys.
See y'all.